Okay, so, right, where did we leave off here? I gotta pull up my list of questions here.
Perfect, great.
How's your day been going?
I'm really glad we managed to connect today. I appreciate you rolling with the punches from our side as well. So, thanks.
Oh, no problem. Just glad for the opportunity.
Great.
Well, I sent you the list of questions, so I guess I'll kind of just work down them. Biggest one, of course, is, it was early November 2011 when you posted your very lengthy essay on Facebook, where you outlined your 3 eras of gaming and, of course, touted the Ultimate RPG really for the first time. So, Shroud of the Avatar, is that this game? Is that the Ultimate RPG?
Yeah, basically that is the intention. So the treatise that I published about a year ago was kind of my post-mortem, you might say, about the 20 years or a little more that I spent developing the Ultima series. And I said, look, here is what I think were the key innovations and advancements that happened, regularly through that series, and I think are worthy of continuing it forward into a new world. I hadn't at that point in time started a next game, but I was clearly starting to, consider it and consider, what would I do if I started a new game. So Shroud of the Avatar is, in fact, the new game that I've started kind of as an outgrowth of that initial treatise to say, here's what I want, here's my foundational principles that I'm going to begin building upon.
Cool. And just so everyone's clear then, because I know you've said some stuff on Facebook and Google Plus and Twitter, but just so everyone's clear, this is a standalone PC title released primarily, if not exclusively, for the PC platform.
Absolutely. In fact, just to give a little more precision to that statement, we're developing it on a PC for the PC. That being said, we're developing it in the great wonders of the Unity engine that, by the way, is a phenomenal sort of tool set. I'm extremely pleased so far that we've chosen that as the basis of our technology. Unity does a great job of cross-compiling to basically anything else that it will physically fit on. And so things like the Mac operating system or a Linux operating system literally are just a single variable change away and recompile. So for other operating systems of a full-scale computer, it should be very easy for us to make those versions also available. And as a player, I like personally to play a lot of my gaming I now do on tablets, just because for me it's very easy for when I travel, and I travel extensively. And so I'm hopeful that the game will shoehorn into a tablet when all is said and done. However, that's just what I'm hoping to do so that I can play it 24 hours a day versus and not have access to it when I'm traveling. But the game itself, the game design and the game's intention and the game's audience is first and foremost, and the relevant constituency is the PC gaming audience.
Awesome. I think a lot of people will be happy to hear that. I know social was kind of, I've been kind of a real proponent of it, to the Ultima fandom, but it obviously isn't an idea that's necessarily gone over well with everyone.
Yeah, and let me even try to address that too, because a lot of people refer to things that, I've even at some point even stated the fact that it would include social elements. But let me first give resolution and clarity to what I mean by that, based on what I've learned about what it means. What I think the good and bad parts of social are. What this game is not going to be is a classic Facebook social game, in the sense of it won't be a free-to-play plus microtransactions and pestery game all the way through, as most social games are. But when people have heard me say things like the following, I said, look, for 20 years we had only solo-player games, that the reach of that audience, the reach of those games was ones of millions of people. Then with MMOs, we reached tens of millions of people, even though the games are more expensive and more complicated. And I think the reason why the market grew in spite of the higher expense and complication is because people like playing with other people. And so it's nice to be able to play with somebody else when you want to. And so it grew the total market for games when games went online. And what's interesting about social and mobile is that there's something magical about the friends graph that has been uncovered, to where if instead of just playing with strangers wandering down the street, that you can actually play with people who you know and care about already because they're your friends, that is a constituency that you care about even more than strangers. And so a lot of social games have often sold into 100 million players or more. And so it's something to not, walk away from lightly. And so what we're going to do with Shroud of the Avatar is, well, it's primarily a story-based, classic, Ultima-style virtual world sandbox game. The way we're going to implement multiplayer is we're going to try to bring people who you actually care about, your friends, into the play space with you. And so if we know who your real friends in the real world are, however you tell us, whether you tell us that in our gaming system, whether you give us access to your email names, whether you give us access to your G+ friends list or Facebook friends list or LinkedIn Facebook list, or none of the above. It's not necessary to give any of them. But if you will let us know who the real world friends are that you do know, we're not going to encourage you to spam them. What we are going to do is find them and bring them closer to you, so that your multiplayer experience is enhanced by the people you actually care about.
Neat. I look forward to seeing how that actually plays out in real life. Although I'm not sure. I have a lot of people on my LinkedIn contacts list. I'm not sure who among them I'd really play with. But anyways, that actually kind of leads into the question that I shot David a little bit earlier today. So I apologize for this one being a little late in the game. It just occurred to me. And, you talked about the multiplayer features, and you also talked about the single-player side of the game. So, and obviously, having been privy to some of the documentation David sent my way, the game will have stuff that you more associate with an MMO, player housing, crafting systems, PvP, things like that. But you've also talked about the solo play, and I know a lot of diehard Ultima fans really want to hear a little bit more about that, and in particular, whether offline play will be possible.
Yes, and our current intention is that offline play is not only possible but common. At least for me too. One of my things where I like to play on tablets. A lot of the times I'm on an airplane, and so there is no possibility to be online. So I'm heavily motivated to make sure offline is possible. The only reason that would interfere with that, or might be the challenge we're trying to overcome, is just whether we can fit what you might call the client, you might call the server, all in one box. You know what I mean? It would have to be encapsulated on your machine. But that's currently the way it's being architected. There is no client, there's no server somewhere else in the MMO sense that the game operates on. And instead, what we're going to do is, if you imagine you're largely playing, offline or solo player, well, when you are connected online, that's when all the persistent world changes will update to you. And so who owns what house and what the decorations look like, and all those things will change. And so if somebody is running a farm or a pub or a blacksmith off in some other part of the world, when you're online, that his NPC shopkeeper and the way he's decorated his shop will pop into your solo player experience. And so the persistent world you'll be playing in it will update to you every time you go online, and be continuously updated if you're continuously online, if you follow my drift.
Wow.
Because if you remember in Ultima Online, it's if you're a blacksmith, it's actually rare that you're not online 24 hours a day.
No.
And so you needed an NPC seller to be there at your blacksmith anyway to make your shop earn money for you when you're not online, which is more often than not. And so if you're using that metaphor, this offline asynchronous way that you interact with each other's homes and shops that proof of concept was already done in Ultima Online, if you follow my meaning.
I see. And yeah, I mean, I kind of get how that would work. That's cool, actually. I look forward to seeing that.
Yeah, the thing this game won't do is, since it's not there's not a single server that allows 10,000 people all to jump in the same map at once. So for better or for worse, we're not going to be able to have 10,000 people all dogpile into Lord Bruce's castle and bring the server to a crawl. The game's not even going to allow that to be attempted. And both that is both a blessing and a curse. I think it's kind of fun to go do that now and then, but by not allowing the game to do that, we save both time and effort in development, and by focusing on instead matchmaking players with people they already know when possible, I think it actually makes it a better play experience for the players who, when you interact with real people, it's people that you have some common cause with, rather than just the masses.
Yeah, and that way, if someone is griefing you, you can get on his case at the pub afterwards. But just like, dude, seriously, what was that?
Yeah, exactly. It's probably somebody you know. And the fact the way we're doing PvP is kind of interesting too. Now, again, this is not implemented, so this is our plan for PvP.
Okay.
So our plans for PvP are neither of two extremes I'm going to describe, and then I'll describe the middle ground that we're taking. UO was completely open PvP. The great joy was it was completely open PvP. You could go, attack anybody you wanted. The great tragedy was that it was completely open PvP, which meant that, generally speaking, people preyed on the newbies, which actually worked against the success of the game in many ways, but it was lots of fun if you were the guy perpetrating it. So in a lot of ways, since few people have dared to do that again, and I think for generally good reason, on the other hand, the way people have generally got around it is they either make PvP fully consensual, or they put it in it only happens in certain raid conditions, or it only happens in certain maps that you opt into. And the problem with that is if you try to make it completely opt-in, only a handful of people opt in, and frankly, it's not very much fun to only PvP the people who have signed up also to only PvP. And so it also leaves something a little lacking. So neither of those extremes really seem quite right yet. And so our plan is to create a game where nominally you as a potential prey are safe from PvP. You're not somebody that anyone can walk up to and just gank. However, there are story segments of the game. There's times and places in the game where you will be encouraged to do activities which will open you to be the target of PvP. And so for example, let me give a hypothetical scenario. A hypothetical scenario would be that you're really trying to earn a bunch of money in this game, and one of the ways that will be very profitable to make money in the game is to run a piece of what I would just broadly describe as contraband, across the country. Well, it might pay really well, but you also are explained well in advance about the way this is contraband, and as soon as you pick up this contraband and start running across the world with it, you'll be flagged as someone who is operating outside the law, is running this contraband, and in fact it will invoke other players known to you or otherwise who will be told, by the way, there's somebody running contraband from the East Coast to the West Coast, be on the lookout, and here's a bounty if you manage to catch him. And so now we've put you into the fox and rabbit kind of scenario that now feels like fun PvP, we hope, because you're engaging in it in the proper spirit, which is that it's now a cops and robbers portion of the game with real people instead of just NPCs.
Yeah, and you're opting in, but you're also not just cordoning it off. So.
Right. Exactly.
Cool.
And it can happen anywhere in the map. It could be literally, might see somebody running by, like, I've got the little smoke going behind me, which means I'm operating outside the law. So either run away from me because I'm a dangerous thug, or come get me because you think you're tough.
Fair enough. I just want to loop back quickly. You talked a fair bit about the social, the migration away from social. But the one thing I just kind of wanted to clarify, if you can, is what exactly prompted that move?
So do you mean away?
Yeah, what prompted sort of the stepping back from Ultimate RPG, Shroud of the Avatar as the pure social game, the pure third era game, to now combination single player, multiplayer, but
Well, I think that so what happened is to me it's a definitional shift. because when you use the words, especially social, not so much mobile, but if you use the word social, what most people interpret is what they see as social gaming on Facebook and through Zynga products.
Yeah.
And universally, those games do both things that I think are very good for the players as a rule, but they also do things that are very bad, especially in the eyes of any traditional gamer. And so what we're trying to do is, take some of the good thinking, but avoid bad thinking. And what I mean by that is, if you look at a good social game, and I mean good in the sense of successful, not in the one you would necessarily want to play personally. If you look at a well-crafted social game, the best things that they do, that are good, I believe, for all players, and if you enjoyed the game, you would probably agree, is that they leverage the friends graph well to the benefit of the player. And so what I mean by that is that, in let's say, a farming game, if in that farming game, the person whose farms I can also see and go visit are people I know about versus strangers, I'm going to be much more interested than if they're strangers' farms.
Right.
And so that's, first of all, a good thing, is to make it appear that my neighbor's farm is next door to my farm. Secondly, they let you connect with those people even when you're not online at the same time, because people who know each other in the real world are rarely simultaneously online. And so when I go to my friend's farm, it's important for me to be able to either water his plants or buy his produce or do things that help him and vice versa, even if we are not online at the identical time. And I think that's also a very good thing for all games that has come out of, quote, social technology. The part that is not good for players, but has been good for the companies that have made a lot of these games, is how to squeeze money out of free-to-play.
Right.
And that's the part we are avoiding like the plague. And so it is actually good monetization strategy to take a free-to-play game and fill it with tons of microtransactions and then tons of ways to leverage you to try to convince you to either start making microtransactions or spam all of your friends to hopefully find one of them to make microtransactions.
Yeah, definitely.
And while that's proven to be a very successful business model, I don't think it makes for very good games. And since we're trying to create a gamer's game, we're going to avoid that monetization strategy.
Nice.
And so I still hope I'm building a third era game. I just think the term social is now fraught with so much appropriate negativity that I'm dumping the terminology.
Okay, fair enough. Moving on then, is there any significance to the timing of this announcement?
Not specifically. I would say the reason why we picked this particular timing is that we've been working on this prototype for about 6 months.
Okay.
We're now to the point where we think we can demonstrate the product sufficiently well to prove our case that we are making a gamer's game that is hopefully appealing to the core fan base of my previous works, and therefore now is the time I believe it's relevant for us to be able to come out there and ask for people to help participate in the game. If people back our Kickstarter, it will help accelerate the development of this game, and we really want to get people's commentary in as early, starting now on subjects like PvP, on subjects like player housing, because if you remember in Ultima Online, if you were there when it shipped, Ultima Online was not only a brave, wonderful new world in many ways, it also had a number of completely catastrophically constructed systems, and that was largely because we didn't have player involvement until very late in the development process. And there were lots of features we developed which were so ill-conceived and or not appropriate for, or not desired by the player community, that work was really wasted, and we eventually just removed those things that we spent lots of time and money on from the game entirely. And there were other areas of simulation and some of the activities and professions that were so wildly popular compared to what we anticipated that we had put in something really underserved, that would really underserve the player base. Because we, and the case study for that was, fishing became instantly popular in Ultima Online, even though it was only, the simulation was 50-50 chance you catch a fish was the whole simulation. And So, we probably should have dumped the virtual ecology and instead put in better fishing. And those are only things you learn by having a connection to the player base as early as possible.
Cool. You mentioned then, too, and, like, we've had... there have been, I know the guys from the Wing Commander CIC had a chance to tour the Portalarium offices a while ago, some months ago now. And you mentioned that timeline, 6 months or so. Now I'm assuming that there was, work being done on the Ultimate RPG even fairly soon after your initial announcement of the concept. So is this a continuation of that work, or did a lot of that kind of get pushed to the side, and this is something new that's being built from the ground up?
No, this has been evolving, since that treatise went up. That is when, with the publication of that treatise about a year ago, that is when, largely, first literally by myself, but only using the rest of the team as sounding boards, I began to put the design concepts together for this. Then, maybe 9 months ago, we began to at least circle back on some what I'll call prototype technologies, and began to research whether, what ended up being Unity as our development platform. And then really 6 months ago is when we began to peel off staff from the other projects that we had and assign them, specifically as employees of the Ultimate RPG game. And up until very recently, even internally, we called it the Ultimate RPG, URPG. That's where the development folders on our server are called URPG. So it is Lord British's Ultimate RPG. We just now, I don't know if you know the story of the naming of Tabula Rasa, but Tabula Rasa was a working title that we kept for so long that it became a permanent name of the game.
I seem to recall that.
And so we began to get worried that if we didn't come up with a real title soon, Lord British's Ultimate RPG would be the de facto name of the new game. And so, and as much as I would be probably happy with that, we really wanted a name that was more closely tied to the actual story that was happening within the game.
Cool. Actually, to that point then, talking about the story of the game a little bit, is it something that, you kind of intend as a... I don't know if you're familiar with Piranhabytes and how they structured Risen, their second major RPG series, as sort of a spiritual sequel to the Gothic RPGs. But what they did is that basically, at the end of Gothic 3 or whatever, you defeat the gods or some such. I can't recall the exact context, but then in Risen, the backstory of Risen is that, in ancient times, there was this man who defeated the gods, and now in Risen, you're dealing with the consequences of that. Is the Ultimate RPG, is it kind of intended as, a direct story sequel to the Ultima series, or is it more in the line of a spiritual successor, maybe along the Gothic Risen model?
It is a spiritual successor. I mean, at the very least, the reasons would be because it has to be.
Yeah.
I have to be very careful not to, connect too directly and become a derivative work of someone else's, since EA now owns the intellectual property of the original Ultima series. That being said, the reason why I published that URPG treatise is to try to communicate to players that what makes an Ultima was not the individual specific character, the name of an NPC or the name of the game. What made an Ultima was the detailed story crafting and the care to create those backstories and the care to create socially relevant events to you and to do that psychoanalysis of you during gameplay, etc. And so that's why by all means I'm creating a world which is not incompatible with what has come before, but is also not derivative of what has come before.
Awesome. That's that's good. And I mean, it's good to hear that. Is Lord British going to be in the game?
Absolutely. And in fact, it's interesting you should ask that question because I actually think that, in fact, I think in my little "What is a Lord British RPG," I even stated that in that little treatise. I actually think that's an important part of Ultima's special is that not only was the player, I think it is important that not only is Lord British an active participant in the game, but so are other members of the team, so that everybody knows that we're on this adventure together. We need the players to be a part of this, part of our crowdfunding, to not only help us accelerate the development of this game, but also we're going to build this world together, and we're going to live in this world together.
Nice. And of course, the obligatory question then, following on from Lord British's presence in the game, is there going to be some super secret way that he can be dispatched during gameplay?
Yeah, that was hilarious. I saw that you sent that one in, and I have to say, my first intention is going to make Lord British immortal. And upon my confidence level that we've accomplished that goal, which as you know in Ultima history, I think the only Ultima where Lord British was actually, we managed to make him immortal, but then purposely put in a backdoor way to kill him for fun, was Ultima 9.
Yeah, you had to bake the poison bread.
And I think that, as a general rule, we failed at protecting Lord British, most famously in Ultima Online, where I got myself killed. And so we will try to make him immortal, and if I feel confident in our ability to actually succeed in making myself immortal, then I will entertain suggestions from the team as to ways to leave the super secret way to kill me. I'll first want to make sure that we have the ability to protect me in general in the first place. Yeah,
awesome. I think Ultima 7 had a deliberate Easter egg too, because
you're right.
The signs drop on your head.
The sign, the brass plaque.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And then evidence of.
Uh-huh.
Anyways,
Yep.
So let's talk. Just kind of coming towards the end of the questions I put together for this. Shroud of the Avatar, and it's got the subtitle "Forsaken Virtues." Is that a not so subtle hint that you intend this to be the start of a new series?
Absolutely. In fact, the way we're releasing Shroud of the Avatar is, Forsaken Virtues in particular, is the first episode of 5 episodes that are currently intended for Shroud of the Avatar.
Wow.
And we actually have what I'll call the outline of all 5 episodes. We understand what story will be unfolding in each of these 5 episodes. We're hoping to release them each episode about once per year. They'll all be expansions of this game world. In fact, the map that I think you have now a copy of is the center tile, you might say, of a 3x3 tic-tac-toe grid that is what
cool.
the world will expand into.
Nice.
And so yes, it will. It is the Forsaken Virtues is episode 1, and 2, 3, and 4, and 5 will come.
Awesome. The map reminds me strongly of Ultima 3, actually. Now, the last question that I put in the email, and again, this is just something that I had resolved to ask you if I ever actually had the chance. And you mentioned Ultima 9 earlier, and this has been, of course, one of the great controversies surrounding Ultima 9 and its plot in particular, was the idea of the Avatar and the Guardian being two sides of the same being. Was that always the design? Was that always the goal?
From 7, 8, and 9, yes. So what's interesting about 7, 8, and 9 is, if you look at the trilogies of Ultima, Ultimas 1, 2, and 3 weren't related to each other at all. Ultima 1 was, barely a game, honestly. It was, my first real attempt at making a game for publication.
Right.
Ultima 2 was really Time Bandits plus Star Wars.
Yes.
In its conception. Ultima 3 kind of became loosely based on some of my D&D worlds. But it really wasn't until Ultima 4 that I really began to create a new world on purpose in earnest. And so Ultima 4 and 5 and 6 are related to each other only in that when I started Ultima 5, I went, okay, now what do they do in Ultima 4? And let me start there and keep building. And so there was no forward thought at all from 4 that expected it to be a 5 or a 6. And it was only after Ultima 6 that I finally said, you know what, I have to start planning a little more ahead than only looking backwards. And so when I invented the Guardian for Ultima 7, I already knew that a couple key points. One was the relationship between the Guardian and Avatar. One was that I was going to leave Britannia for Ultima 8 and go to the dark side of, and Pagan for Ultima 8. and then I knew fundamentally in Ultima 9 then that I was going to ratify, the unification and departure of both the Avatar as well as the Guardian.
Awesome. Well, I think I'm about bingo for time, to use an Air Force term.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
thank you so much for taking the opportunity to answer some questions. And
No, my pleasure. And thank you very much for having the interest and sending those questions over. You have some unique, fun questions from my perspective, so thanks.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, and I look forward to Friday. And,
Great.
yeah, all the best. Safe travels on the rest of this press tour.
Thank you. Sure appreciate it.
Take
Bye-bye.
care, Richard.